Hello and welcome to this first episode of the Wayshowers. I'm so excited to have you, and I'm also so excited to introduce you my first ever invited guest. Her name is Alanna Gillis. She's from Canada, but she lives in Scotland. She's a writer, a visionary, a tree and forest advocate. And yes, welcome, Alanna.
Thank you. So exciting to be here, to be able to experience your magic.
How are you doing today?
I just got back from the trees, of course. So I would say today I feel a mix of, tender, alive, very present. I feel excited and nervous all at the same time.
Lovely. I feel the same as you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel we met in a very magical way, you and me. I posted a message on a Facebook group, no idea which one it was because I've never been back on it. And I received tons of messages, and basically I met two people and I really felt drawn to you, and we had a lovely meeting. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and anything you want to tell us, and how you got to Scotland, to Edinburgh, and then to Pitlochry?
Sure. So I never know what to say when people ask me. It's like, it feels like a job interview sometimes. Tell us about yourself. And I never know what to say, but I would love to start with a story because I think stories kind of tell us a lot about each other. So I want to talk a little bit about how I got to Scotland, which feels very, yeah. So, how did I get to Scotland? Well, the short answer is I had a dream. I have a dream, but I went to bed and had an actual dream. And I have no idea what the dream was. But I woke up that morning and it was like every single cell in my body knew where I had to go. And I wrote it down. I still have, if I had my phone, I would show it to you, but I write notes on my notepad. And I wrote, well, first I woke up and I said, oh, I have to go to Scotland. And there might be some kids in the background here. But the next thing, I just wrote these words in my note, and I have the date. It was sort of October 25th or something like that in 2019, I guess. And it all begins in Scotland. And so from that point, it was just really clear. So I said, okay, well, first things first, let's get a passport. Let's see if I can actually live in Scotland. And that happened way faster than I anticipated. I think it took me all of a month to get everything there. And within 3 days, they had approved it and sent the passport in the mail. And at that point, I went, oh, I guess I really am supposed to be in Scotland. And I was open to it. I knew I felt a change coming. I'd had the question of where I needed to go next for a while. I would say probably from 2018. I also remember in April 2019 being like, I'm gonna take off and I'm gonna go backpacking. I'm gonna be in Europe, but I had no plan. I had no location. So I paused, and it was a beautiful pause. And then that dream happened and the answer came.
And do you remember at all the dream, or you never remembered it?
No,
that's amazing.
I don't remember it at all. It may have been, I know sometimes, you know, that space where it's sort of in the morning and it's that space when you're in that in-between place. Yeah. And I receive a lot of information and I'm somewhat conscious, but still asleep. So it could have even just been receiving that way. And but I just say it was a dream, and it just filled me with information.
Lovely. And have you ever thought about living in Scotland before, or did it just come up?
No, it had never crossed my mind. I mean, obviously traveling had crossed my mind, and the idea of being in the UK. I'd been here before. I had actually been here before. So my mom is Scottish, and my grandparents on her side. So she was born in Edinburgh, but I'd never really contemplated living here.
So how did that feel? Wasn't it super scary to just be like, okay, I'm moving to Scotland?
It was, and I'll tell you, it wasn't an easy decision. I was in a relationship. I was working. I didn't love the job. It wasn't anything that I saw myself doing long term, but I was in love, like so in love, and really loving that moment of my life. I was living in a beautiful place. Squamish, BC it's just this wild, rugged, beautiful place, growing place. And I had my family. So it was not, I got into it and I was like, who leaves such a beautiful life? There was nothing wrong with it. It was beautiful. And so there was a lot of grief, I would say, around that choice, but also clarity. I knew that there was something that I was coming to Scotland to discover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you arrived just before the lockdown, right?
Yeah. So I got here, I landed in Glasgow in, I guess it was February 22nd. Mm-hmm. And shortly after came to Edinburgh, and a month later, I think, to the day almost, we went into lockdown, which was such a it was such a blessing in a way, because when I had left for Scotland, I had all these ideas. I was going to travel. I was going to be, I don't know, somehow I had in my head, I was going to end up on a beach dancing around a fire. Like, it was going to be totally exotic, romantic, and alive and colorful and bright. And I was going to make this business. And I had all these grand ideas. And then I got there and I was like, I need a home. I just need a home. And so it's been this really beautiful journey of letting go of everything I thought it would be and letting it be what it is. And so it became more of a nesting experience for me. And even, I kind of was like, okay, I have to get this job, and I have to make money, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. And then with lockdown, it kind of went, there's no jobs, which is not true. I ended up getting a job, but it slowed me down, and it forced me to consider what I really wanted and needed and valued.
Yeah, beautiful. And this reminds me of the post you wrote very recently about making up these grand stories. We all do this. We have an idea or a download and we decide to do something, and then suddenly we just make up a whole plan where magic is going to happen. It's going to change our lives. And at the same time, we're terrified of it. And so do you feel like these grand plans, this imagination, have a role to play in our path? Do you, or is it just a way to rationalize it? Or what do you think about that?
Well, so here's kind of what I've noticed in myself is if I hold on to things, I'm trying to think of how best to say it. So it's like something pops up and I have an initial feeling or thought or whatever, if I don't allow it to express in a way, I make it way bigger. So I actually assign things more meaning potentially than they really have. And I think it's energy, like where you place your attention, it gets bigger and it expands. And so I feel like that's what it's about, is I'm putting so much energy into those things and projecting a lot of expectation, a lot of, well, creative imagination for one thing. My imagination, I can make up worlds. And I love that. This isn't bad. This isn't wrong. It's brilliant and it's beautiful. And there's also allowing that to happen while staying present with what is.
Yeah.
And that's been my work, is feeling my inner child or my inner parts wanting to believe this beautiful, magical story of what's possible, and staying grounded in my present reality.
Yes, and allowing the real magic to happen, but might not look at all the same, and might not look as expansive and grand and
shiny.
Shiny. But it's actually also very magic. I do it too, and to me, I really feel like it's a way to tame my fears, because if I imagine this, then it's positive, so I'm gonna go to it. Whereas if I go to the other side, which is the fear side, I'm gonna make big stories as well, the big scary ones. So in a way, it pushes me to go forward.
Yeah, and I think that's the purpose it serves. When I can remember other moments in my life where that feeling of, oh, this is an opportunity, and oh my gosh, it feels so huge, and it is. I think what we're experiencing is flow. Yeah. Is life, is creation kind of wanting to live through us. And it's compelling us forward towards this thing, whatever it may be. And I love that you talked about the fear, because when I'm in that space of oh, I'm so excited, and it's going to be this thing, and it's going to be magical. If someone comes along and they're like, they are really realistic or kind of critical, or even, well, have you thought about this? Yeah. I immediately go, no, like, I don't want to hear what you have to say, or I get mad. And what I've realized is that reaction is also fear. It's because I'm attached. So the part of me that gets attached to that beautiful story, the magical fairy tale, is also afraid.
Yes, I agree.
It's also, and it's just showing up in two different ways. And again, none of it's wrong. It's just coming back to, okay, I see this, and there is magic happening. Let's like own that there is magic happening, and that's the flow, the experience we're having of synchronicity, or something showing up that's unexpected, or even hoped for. That's pretty magical.
Yes. So how do we find the middle in between those two fears? Like, do you connect to your body? Do you connect to your intuition, to the present moment? Like, what's your way of dealing with that and returning to the real flow and not the imagination of the flow?
Yeah, I would say I'm still figuring that one out.
Yeah.
It's imperfect, and I get wrapped up in both sides of the equation quite often, and I think that's okay. What has me come back to center is the forest. Friends talking about it, sharing. I think it's awareness, I would say, being able to share, here's what I'm noticing. I'm making this really big thing out of this, and it may or may not be bad. But even just saying it. And I think that's what I meant, kind of to go back to this idea that it's all energy. If I'm sitting there and making up this world and these stories and the imagination, but I'm not necessarily letting it be expressed, it builds and builds and builds.
Yes.
And so when I express it, that actually allows it to move, maybe dissipate, to be less like extreme almost.
Yes.
So that I naturally, just, I don't know, even saying it, I can feel it just flowing through right now.
Yeah.
That sometimes you just have to express it. You have to say the things and the stories and the pictures, and then that lets it move naturally.
Yeah, I guess it's shining the light on the truth of it, and whether it is by speaking it or writing it or sharing it in any way you can, it's just saying, oh, it's there, and then it makes it more real, and then it can dissipate.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean something magical isn't gonna unfold. It just means maybe allowing, there's more space for whatever that is, without the attachment or the fixation, sort of the tunnel vision. It allows for more possibilities that can be equally synchronous and amazing, but they might just be more gradual and a little smaller, or just a little, there's things on the way that kind of nudge us in a direction, and that's the point of it.
Yeah, just a lesson, a small joy. Why does everything have to be like the big Romanesque,
right,
musical?
The ego, like, just it's totally that. It's going back to making a big deal out of things. It's kind of in our culture that things have to be big and shiny and drastic and just big.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of that statement. I always go big or go home. And that's, in a way, it's beautiful. Yeah. The sense of possibility, and the little things are so often, for me, the things that are so filled with so much love and joy and specialness.
Yeah, I agree. And those are the things we usually remember afterwards, and carry more meaning. So to go back to the trees, because you mentioned the trees, and I know it's very special to you. Do you want to share about your relationship with trees in the past and now? And yes, quite curious to learn more about this.
I would say, so first I'll say my relationship with the trees is unfolding, and has been since I was probably born. I grew up on 25 acres of forest, essentially forest. My parents bought it. They cleared a portion. Well, there actually was a forest fire, so it cleared part of the property for them. Okay. They built the house. And so I grew up surrounded by trees. And the memories that I have of my childhood are just being surrounded by nature. We had this pond, and I used to float around on this raft that my dad made, and I would just make up all these stories. I was always on an adventure and catching frogs, and just floating around. But then I was also spending a lot of time in the trees. And I have one memory that's coming up that was overturned. It had fallen over a tree on the property, and it became my fort. So I would say that probably has been hugely formative for me. And ultimately, I went through that phase of, oh, I've got to live in the city and get the job, and kind of probably moved away from spending a lot of time in nature, and didn't really have the awareness of how integral nature, I mean, we are nature. We forget to include ourselves in nature, but we are nature. And I didn't have the awareness of how much I loved it, and how much it's a practice. Like, going to the forest for me has become a practice. So then I went through, I think where things started shifting, I went through a leadership program. And I remember that really opened up some new channels, we'll say, for me. And I remember one day being out on a swing, and I was swinging. It was a windy day, but all of a sudden I clued into the fact that the trees were swaying with me. And I went, oh my God, they're playing with me.
Yeah.
And, you know, the rational mind will tell a lot of stories about that, but I knew. And so I think from there, something opened. And then I just started walking around the forest, and I will connect with them. They'll catch, there's different shapes that will catch my attention. They all have their different presence. They all have their different magic. They're healers. They're timeless. And now, I think since coming to Scotland, my relationship with them really strengthened while I was in Squamish, but Scotland has again opened up more of me, and the communication has shifted with them. So it's not just I feel their presence, but now I can hear or sing, and still go through the forest and just have a relationship with them. So I see them as mentors, healers.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I watched, I think you have 2 mindful moments on YouTube so far, where you share nature sound and images, and that was really relaxing to watch that with a cup of tea. It's beautiful. So what kind of messages do they give you, and how does it manifest?
So I would say the messages come through differently. Sometimes it will come if somebody's walking by me and they say something, I'll be like, oh, there's the message of that particular tree. But probably the more moving or more powerful messages of late have been, they come through, I can hear them speaking. It's less outside of me, and I hold it up here because that's kind of how I listen, but it is in my head. It doesn't feel like it's coming from outside. But the messages have become, they're a language, and I have no idea what language it is, but one day there's this beautiful, beautiful Scots pine. It's in the forest nearby, and she is huge and just twisted and magnificent. And she comes to me as grandmother, which is exactly what she is. I mean, her presence is just boom. And I was standing in front of her one day, and all of a sudden it was just these words coming through, and I ended up pulling out my phone again, and I'm trying to capture them in my phone in a note. The immediate urge I had was I have to write this down. I have to record these words that are coming to me, and they're very much not English. And it was just, I would stand there, and they would come, and I'd write. And I noticed if I couldn't get it out, they were repeated until I got it. And so, yeah, then several times I'll go out to the woods, and there was one day where it was like each tree was just saying what they needed to say. And generally I would say I don't understand rationally or logically the language, but when I speak it with others, or when I even speak it to myself, I know.
So when writing, you make meaning as well, right?
With writing, I'm writing what I'm hearing. So there's no translation.
Okay.
It's literally what I hear, and I can share. Yeah. And the meaning, it's more, I would say it's less a mind understanding, and it's more a body knowing.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I know you're very, just like as a side note, you're a very intuitive person, and we've talked about intuition together before. Do you feel like it's a similar way that intuition manifests?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes all different ways. I guess what I'm recognizing is the number of different ways, but when it shows up, I'm trying to, you can't see, but I've got my hand right on my solar plexus, and it's just this, I know sensation.
Yes.
I know.
That's
so however it's coming, whether it's song lyrics or somebody walking by and saying something, or a tree and me, recording it, it's that same knowing.
Yeah. Beautiful. Do you want to share now what you have? Or?
Sure. Yeah. It's going to take me a moment. I just have to find.
That's fine.
I have a lot of notes on my phone. It's kind of my thing. It's funny, I write everywhere. Okay. Just want to see. So this is one of the first. Yeah, this is one of the first messages from grandmother. I always get a little nervous before I share them.
It's okay.
Yeah. Knock, tuck, se tuck. A la brac se brum. Criee est crebrum. Chronos scholaste scridir. Solebron. Amen. Estiri rien nobolaste. Sonoren estonen estirir sir noben. Arir nir honoren. Plier grastoren. Aren stefaren. Epoch stock aren. Rock nok. Aren saren. Yabian saharen.
Thank you. It's beautiful. It's magic. Do you know what it means?
That one in particular is a greeting. It's an invitation. And an opening. And it's when I say invitation, it's an opening to our power as human beings.
Okay. Thank you. Have you ever had a message about resilience from the trees? Because it's the theme of the month, so that's why I'm asking. Because I guess I believe trees can teach us a lot about resilience.
Oh so. Goodness, can they ever?
Yeah.
I haven't had. I mean, they are our teachers in a way, or my teachers, anyways. It's interesting because we had quite a bit of wind come up a few days ago. I don't really remember when it was. And there's been a few days where there's wind. And every time there's wind and I go out into the forest, it's always an interesting place to be because there's tree branches breaking off everywhere. So they're brittle in parts. They can be, and they can break, and limbs fall, and yet, you know, sometimes you'll walk through the woods and there's another tree holding up a giant branch that has fallen off another one. They really are a testament to resilience. Because think of what they have to go through just to get to the point where they even have branches to break. So trees for me, they are resilience. I mean, they grow in a way where they know if they shoot up too high, they can break. So there's a natural intelligence in the way that they grow, which allows them to be resilient, but also, you know, they're not on their own. They're part of a forest.
Yes, that's
so part of their resiliency is community.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. How they grow together and how they protect each other in a way, in a very impressive organization, and how they communicate between each other.
What immediately came to mind as you were saying that was I was talking with a friend about nurse logs. Mm-hmm. So nurse logs are, so when a tree falls over, it begins to decay in the forest. But that's not a loss. Essentially, what happens is that tree starts decomposing, breaking down, and all these other life forms, new trees, baby trees, take nourishment from this nurse log. And so even in death, they are contributing to the health and the well-being of the community of trees that is in the forest that is around them. And I remember someone telling me the question of the nurse log is, how available can I be? And in the context of resiliency, it's like how, when we give, when we contribute, when we serve our community, it's building a network that, one, means we can be held when things don't go well. But that's not why. I don't think that's the only why we create community. I think it's because in the giving we are also receiving.
Yes.
And that's what they keep teaching me is no matter what phase they are in their life, whether it's death or new, they're contributing something. And they're all, it's this collaboration, working together in order to survive, but not at necessarily the cost of anybody else. I mean, there is competition in the forest, absolutely, but there's also an incredible amount of collaboration.
Yeah. It makes me think, I just had an image of emperor penguins in Antarctica. When it gets super cold, they all make a huge circle, and the ones outside are protecting the others from the cold, and they swap places. And the ones in the middle are probably the younger one and the baby ones to be protected from the cold. Yes, same image, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and there's those big grandmother trees in the forest, and to me, they're guardians, and they're there, and they, all their young are around them and dispersed. They're not right next to them because things blow on the wind. But yeah, they are protectors, and they all have their different roles.
Yes. Very, very inspiring, I think. So I know you write a lot on Growth to Grace, which is a blog you have. So what is writing for you? What does it represent for you?
So I have a story about that, and I'll because I loved that question when I saw it. Okay. And so the story is I was going through we'll say 24 to 48 hour period of what I would say was loneliness. And I'm so glad I went through that, because in the process there was healing that was coming up, and it was around my mother and motherhood. And so I felt in the sort of the darkest moments of that, this urge to reach out to my mom. And normally I would hold back, and I would come up with a reason why I couldn't be that vulnerable. And this time I just started writing this message, and as I was writing it, I was asking for what I needed to hear. I was asking for what I would love to receive in this moment of just, ugh. And by the time I finished that message, my energy had shifted, and I realized just in the act of writing, I had already given myself what I needed. I had said the words I needed to hear, written the words that I needed to hear from myself more than anybody else. And so for me, what I've recognized in that moment, since I knew it before, but writing is my process. It's my way of connecting with me. It's my way of coming back to my source, my center, it's that if I can just express, then I can come back to truth, or come to truth. And that's what writing is for me. It's not about, I remember when I first started down the path of trying to be a coach, and I was like, I'm going to write, and I was writing for others. And I've now totally let that go. I don't write for anybody but me. And that's it. It's just this way of expressing what is inside of me, getting it out of me, and coming to truth.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what writing is.
Yeah, and even if you write just for you, I'm sure you're helping and inspiring someone who is going through the same thing. And that's what's beautiful about blogging, I believe, is if you write authentically, you're going to write for yourself, and you're going to help yourself, but in the process you are going to reach out to someone else as well reading you.
Yeah, and I think letting go, for me, what was really getting to that place of, oh, I'm just writing for myself, has meant that when somebody shares that something touched them or they could relate to it, it creates these beautiful moments of connection and connection, like we're in this together.
I'm just thinking aloud, but it makes me think of the trees again, because writing to make yourself feel better, it's all about resilience as well, and processing feelings, and at the same time you create those connections as well. So of course it's how we communicate, making stories and making meaning as humans. So so the current situation has been difficult for some people, has been easier for some, but it has taught us as societies and as humans many lessons. And so if you feel comfortable, what has this past year taught you, and what do you believe it has taught us as humanity? It's a big question. You have to answer. I like big questions.
Oh, that is what has the slow down. Life is right here. There's nothing matters more than right here. Yeah, I think it's been incredibly difficult. It's been difficult for me, and yet I also think it's been probably easier for me than, comparatively to others. And yet, even though I'm someone who I think lives in the slow lane, it slowed me down. And what COVID, and I mean, so many things, there's so much upheaval and chaos and dismantling that is happening. But what it has given me, and I think we could say this, we're the micro, and what's happening in the world is at a macro level. That what is happening in me, this opportunity, this clarification of what matters most, is happening globally as well. And not just clarification, but also the call to build what does work for me. So rather than resisting what is and what isn't working, this year has been an invitation to create what does work. Slowly, deliberately, one foot in front of the other. I am an impatient person, and I want it, as soon as I set my mind to something, it should have happened yesterday. And yet it's just this, there's moments where I can access this sense of, I can feel things shifting, moving, happening. I feel that. And it's the impatience that kind of blocks that. And then there's moments where I have no patience and I'm, not tapped into that. And that's okay. That's all part of the journey. So, yeah.
And because we all on different levels of understanding and knowing ourselves, would you have any recommendations to everyday rituals or routines or anything you practice that helps you stay in the flow, stay in this difficult situation, be resilient, I guess, in a way, and just keep moving through difficult times?
Well, two that come to mind. About the only practice I can attest to doing every single day, the only one, is going into the forest or finding a tree. I have my go-tos. Mm-hmm. They're my team. I have one that is very close if I do not have the energy to go far. I have others that are further, but every single day I go to a tree at least.
Even in the horrible Scottish weather?
Yeah. Those are some of the best times because they cover you. There's shade under the trees.
I remember you and me under a tree in a full-blown out storm.
But we were shaded. We were shaded, and that's what they offered, like this protection.
Yeah.
So that is the one practice I can say I do. Others I probably aspire to more, but the other thing that came up when you asked is new yet not so new. Maybe I just have new language for it, and it's this concept of micro truths. And that really does come with paying attention to what's going on in my body and saying it. So if I'm in a conversation and I notice I feel tense, or I'm suddenly noticing I have, something going on in my head, it's about saying it, just noticing it. So even if it's just taking a breath.
Yeah, that's really good. And I guess you don't make any story about it, right?
The point is not to make here's what I can do. Sometimes I'll say, and the story I'm making up about this is X.
Yeah.
But it's really owning that this is my experience. And often what I find is when I share from that place, if it's even, I can do that even if I'm alone, right? Nobody has to be here to receive that. But especially, I find it especially powerful in connection. If I can, acknowledge, here's the story I'm making up about this in this moment. It often gives the other person an opportunity to be like, wow, that is not my experience at all. And it invites them into what is their experience and to share what's going on for them. And it's really disarming, especially if it's a charged conversation. It can be really disarming to have somebody say, oh, I'm noticing that there's tension in my belly, and actually it reminds me of this time when I was a kid and this happened, and blah, blah, blah. Oftentimes I don't have that memory, but I have the feeling. And if I can start there, it just allows for the truth to emerge.
Yes, and to slow down the conversation as well if it's a difficult conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
Just brings presence to whatever is happening in the moment.
Yeah, I'll try that.
Yeah. It's a practice. I can't take credit for it. It's there's a book, Conscious Loving, Gay Hendricks, and I always forget his partner's name, but they have written about it, this getting and sharing the micro truth.
Okay.
And that's why I bought the book. And I adore the concept, and it is so grounding for me.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
So I know you've had some big personal and professional realization in the past 2-3 months, I would say. And you've got, without getting into it, because this might be personal, we don't have to know what it is, but when you have these knowings, and like when you move to Scotland, for example, it's similar. For the Scotland one, it was difficult, you said, but you still did it. So is it always that easy that you just do it, or how do you deal with it?
No. Let's talk about how many times I know I'm supposed to take my sunglasses and I don't, and then I regret it. No, it's not that easy. That was not easy, that experience either. And I think that where I would say the challenge was in coming here, it was in staying. It was one thing to get here. It was another thing to stay here.
Yeah. Well, lockdown helped you.
It sure did. It was like, guess what? Even though you want to leave, you're here. So thank goodness. But yeah, it takes, like, the choice itself, I find, is usually the easy part. The decision not actually is not always the easy part. It can take a lot for me to get to that place of knowing or accepting what I know.
Yeah.
Especially bigger life decisions. But then there's the knowing what I know and choosing it and then staying the course.
Yeah.
And that's, talk about resilience.
Yes. Now that's interesting. For me, it's easier for bigger decision than to take my sunglasses. Is it the same for you?
Totally.
Yeah.
Because you can't ignore, sometimes I find with the bigger decisions, it's because it in my body, like, it's so much bigger. It presents bigger. Whereas the energy of it, like, I can feel the energy of it is usually right here, and it's unavoidable. Whereas when it's the smaller things, the day-to-day things, the nuanced things, it's so subtle. It's so subtle. And that's where I will be more inclined to step over my knowing. Or even if there's other people involved, it's inconvenient sometimes to choose that knowing or to act on it when there's other people involved. Those are the moments I think that build deeper trust.
Yeah.
And those are the moments that I am continually looking back and being like, damn it. But then you know what? I correct. Because often there's an opportunity to just slightly shift or to acknowledge it, especially if it's with a friend or in a situation or whatever. I can actually just be like, oh my gosh, guess what? I mean, the sunglasses, I'm out of luck. I'm in the forest. I need them. Don't have them. Oh well. But there's always going to be an opportunity to come back, to recover.
Yeah.
Always. So yeah.
I completely agree. I actually play with it a lot because, as you say, for the big decision, it kind of feels inevitable. And even if I don't like it necessarily, I know and I trust, so I will go for it. Whereas in the small things, I always think, oh, it's not big consequences, so I can play and be a rebel a little bit.
And I love, one of the things, I don't know if I've said this, but like, I love the way that you work with your intuition. That's it's something that I've never done as a, you know, it feels so devotional and it feels like such a practice. That I really admire that in you, the way that you do write to your intuition and work with it. That is so, I think that's unique and I think it's beautiful. And I admire that.
Thank you.
It inspires me.
Thank you. For me, it's not the sunglasses, it's the raincoat, which is a problem in Scotland.
Totally. Oh my gosh, yes.
But well, it's okay. All right. I want to ask you if you're happy to share. I know you want to start a master's in engaged ecology at the, I might pronounce that wrong, the Schumacher College. Mm-hmm. And you've started a crowdfunding campaign to finance your studies. Do you want to share about that?
Sure. So that was another one of those things. I love sharing these with you, like the magic of the universe. So when was it? It probably started November, December. I just went, I am letting go. I am letting go of everything I thought I would ever do. Everything. I keep trying to, I just felt like I was trying to force things and create things that really just felt kind of stagnant or stale, old ideas that I just couldn't let go of. And so I cleared the decks. I stopped writing. I didn't write for a month on the blog. I journal and everything, although I don't know that I did then. I put everything down. And then around probably in the beginning of January, I rediscovered a book that I had read about 20 years ago, the Celestine Prophecy. Mm-hmm. And I was reading it, and I knew when I ordered it, there was a reason I was ordering it, but I didn't know what that reason was. I'd already read the thing. And so I kept saying to a friend of mine, I'm reading this book for a reason. I know it. So I'd also bought this journal, and I had it sitting on my desk for ages. It was probably about 2 months. And it was this tree, this beautiful, beautiful journal with a tree on the cover. And so I had that sitting there. And one day I went to bed, and I had been meaning all day to crack open that journal. I was like, today's the day, but I didn't. And so I crawled into bed with my book, The Celestine Prophecy, put the journal on the floor beside my bed and started reading. And I was in probably the last couple of chapters, and all of a sudden I read this one sentence, and it talks about the power of ancient forests and trees. And I just went, boom, oh my gosh, there it is. There it is. And I cracked open my journal and I started writing this thing. And all I could say was, I'm in. I am 100% all in. Turns out, so I'm trying to think of the timeline. So anyways, all of that happened, and nothing really happened. It didn't really change anything. I made my website. I started creating tree stuff. I started sharing my tree messages. I knew I was already in service of trees because I've already been doing this for years. Like, I didn't actually need to do anything different. I was just conscious. And so I was in a conversation with a friend of mine, and he told me about a friend of his who was looking at this school. Went to the website, looked at it, and just went, oh my gosh, this place sounds amazing. And the master's, for whatever reason, was what drew my attention. Turns out my mom had actually sent me an email with the link to Schumacher College in November. So this was the second time this place had been presented to me. And I think you tend to think the same way. If something comes up 3 times, heck, if something comes up more than once, it's something I need to listen to. So that was really it. And I am the master's itself. I think what drew me is one, that it's an opportunity to live in community.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not Schumacher, but the Dartington Trust. It's a 1,200 acre estate, and they've created a sustainable community essentially there. So it's built off the principles of an ashram. So everybody contributes something. So whether it's growing food, so helping garden, cook, clean, you're a contributor to the community. And it's an opportunity to be surrounded by a community of people that are interested in ecology and our connection to place and our connection within our communities, and who we want to be and what we want to do given all of that.
That sounds amazing. I'm so excited for you and for you to share about it. Maybe you can come back and tell us all about it when you're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a ways off, and sometimes I have my moments of, is this going to happen? Because it's January next year. And knowing the way life goes, things have a way of shifting, changing direction. But I think what it gave me was something to aim for and something to fundraise for, in a way, and to save money. I'm not just expecting a free ride here. I'm also saving my own money and putting it towards it as well. But it gives I think what I liked about the fundraising idea was I want to offer guided forest walks and meditations, even if it's a recording for somebody. It's a gift. That's really all it is. And I love the idea of reciprocity and collaboration. And so if I can offer that for somebody's generosity for donating to my campaign, I feel that feels so good. Feels so good.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. I can't wait to go to Pitlochry and go on a walk with you.
Yes.
One day when we are allowed out.
When we are free. Soon it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Yes. And I guess I just want to end with one question. And what is what is bringing you joy right now in your life? Besides trees.
I know, I'm like, you know what I have to say? It's more than one thing. So what's bringing me joy? Okay, so the other day I went there's a little store here in town, and the guy knows me because it's a small town. And I walked in and I asked for a coffee. This is like one of my second takeaway coffee since whenever we went in lockdown, kind of a big deal. And so I was interacting with this guy that it's a food, they have groceries and it's all local and he's local, and it's so nice to walk into a place where they know you and recognize you. And he made me coffee, and he totally, it was such a hilarious thing. He was like, I'm going to guess that you don't take sugar because you're already sweet enough. And I burst out laughing. But it felt so good. And then there was another occasion I was working, actually, and I work remotely, part-time, thank goodness. And I had this opportunity to speak to someone from Canada who had come through Canada. And towards the end of the conversation, I said, oh, and I noticed you're from Canada. Well, guess what? I'm from Canada. And it created this opening into this really beautiful conversation where I heard all about this person's life and got a beautiful message at the end of the call that felt like it was so for me. And so I think what's bringing me joy is what happens when I open to myself and to others, and they just unfold.
Yeah.
And they just give these beautiful moments of connection with otherwise complete strangers. And to me, there is nothing more joyful and satisfying than that.
Yeah, that's beautiful, especially right now and this past year where it might be more difficult to talk to strangers, but or to talk to anyone if you live alone. So it's well, all those interactions are really beautiful. And thank you for sharing your stories. And I guess I just want to ask you, where can viewers find you online and where can they follow you? And any website, I'll put the links wherever. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have a few different creative projects. First is growthtograce.com. That is I've called it my reflective space for my heart and my soul. It's my safe room in my head. So I write there. And then I also have AlannaGillis.com, and that's my nature inspired, just place for creation, but also where I talk about my vision and stuff like that. It's changing. It'll probably change 5 times between now and next week, but I love that. And then I am on, so I have a Instagram account. I'm not using it right now, but I feel more open to it again, now that I have maybe more intentionality around how I want to use it. So you can follow me there at Alanna, Alanna_creates.
Okay.
I'm also on Flickr, but I don't know. I'd have to give you the link. I don't actually know, but I'm on it. If you search probably Alanna Gillis, you'll find me there because I got a new camera. And so I'll be posting photos that are worthy of being posted up there as I learn my new DSLR camera.
Amazing. I look forward to see that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Alanna. Thank you everyone for watching this first episode of the Wayshowers. I'm so excited and so inspired already by this first conversation, and I can't wait to share more inspiring people in the week to come and hopefully talk with Alanna again on another occasion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lucie, for having me here and for even thinking me as a wayshower. That's a huge honor. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alanna.